Julaine, and she'll describe a little bit about the Domestic Partnership Registry and its implications, and then I'm sure she'll take it off and talk about all the other stuff she's got going on. Join me in welcoming Julaine.
Well, thank you so much that I managed to get this off mute, David Lewis. I moved the button. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
There.
I know, I'm so soft-spoken. And whether I can get this thing on me or not is another question. While I'm going to divert your attention. I want you to meet some new employees for our organization before I get started here. Here in the center is Jenny Maziarka, and Jenny is our new communications manager. She came on in April. She's part-time right now, but so we're doing some videotaping today to try to let people know what we're doing. And over here, our newest employee is James Maylett, and he joined us as Executive Vice President for Wisconsin Family Action, effective essentially the first of this year. So both of these are filling critical roles, and I'm thrilled to have them. James is up in Eagle River, and we're making the transition, and it'll be over time. He's married and has 3 young boys who are involved in hockey, and his wife enjoys seeing him every once in a while, so we can't keep him all the time in Madison, but eventually we'll have him completely transitioned in down here. By the way, I just cannot emphasize how big that change is. Bringing on someone in that level has been my dream for years now, because it's about the future of the organization. You note, please, the youth involved here, and it's so encouraging to find young people like James, and who shares the passion, who shares what our organization is about. And we have Jo Egelhoff here. She's a board member, a volunteer, former field director, a friend, I don't know, you name it, and Jo fills the category for me. So we welcome her and Dave today from points very far south from their recent travels. But so I'm honored to be here and to talk to you about, as David said, an important topic. And this Boy Scout thing, can I just launch onto that for a minute? We sent out an alert. It was not on my list of things to do before I started out here this morning. And so the format I chose was very bad, but the message is good. All right. And I hope you're on our mailing list. And Appling pulled one of her I didn't even remember my high heels, so I look shorter than usual. But I was so scrambled leaving, I forgot to bring a sign-up sheet. But I'm going to tell you something. If you aren't on our email list, you need to be. You need to be. You can get information that happens at the state level and at the local level and at the national level. And because we're there watching those emails and we get paid, apparently I must not be because I could choked on that word. We get paid to do that. And we're your ears and your eyes out there. And we need you to take that number we posted out there. I'm going to take a stab at it. I believe it's 970-582-2000. And I'm 99.9% sure I'm right. Jenny's going to check it, but I believe it's 970-582-2000. That is the phone number for the Boy Scouts of America National Office. They need to hear from citizens like you. Now look, it's one thing to come.
I called, and just so you know, they let it ring and ring and ring. Hang in there, because eventually they do answer after the 20th ring or something like that, and then they offshoot you to a pollster. It seems like this has gotten a little out of control, so they've got you, but just stay on the line, because they do
Praise
answer.
God that it's out of control.
Mm-hmm.
Look, these organizations, whether they're public or private, cannot afford criticism from the grassroots. Look, they survive on the dues and the fees that the boys who enlist in the Boy Scouts pay, and those families pay to put those kids into Boy Scouts. And they need to hear that there are parents all over the country who say, yep, I was right. Oh, I'm wrong. I had the wrong. Okay, 972-580-2000. 972-580-2000. Thank you, Jo. Please make that call. I tell people all over this state, and in the last 8 days, I've spoken in Green Bay, Manitowoc, Shawano, and here, I think that's it. I think that covers the waterfront for those 4 times. And everywhere I go, I keep trying to tell people, it's one thing for us to read books, watch DVDs, listen to radio, listen to TV, look at the internet, but it's a whole another level for us to do something.
Amen.
Do something. And when you choose that thing to do, make it positive, make it count. Make those phone calls. Folks, if we can't make phone calls, we're in trouble. Because that's like the easiest thing we can do. You know, even if I have to do voice-activated dialing, I don't have to use my hands hardly anymore to make a phone call. please, I plead with you, let's pull the Boy Scouts of America back from the edge. I was on the radio, in addition to the weather really being bad, and I was on the radio this morning in this weather while I was driving. And I'm a woman, I can multitask. And probably wasn't the smartest thing to do, but a radio station called me after they got that alert, and I waded into something that I probably shouldn't have, but I'm going to tell you the truth. One of my main concerns about this for the Boy Scouts, I think it's very close to what we experienced in the Catholic Church with the priest scandal. Now, the Catholic Church got pretty much of a free pass on that being almost exclusively homosexuality, but it was. How many women have stepped forward and to say I was abused? Hardly any. And they virtually got a free pass. If I'm a parent and I'm looking at putting my young boy into Boy Scouts, I am very concerned if they take and make a wholesale, sexual orientation is immaterial. And if I understand this right, you can be very open about it. So the Scouts are out at a jamboree, they're camping. This has got trouble, danger written all over it. All over it. It's not just political. It's being bullied. Look, these people are being bullied. Right. These are the people who come out day after day, day after day, day after day and say, quit bullying us, pass bullying bills, which we did in this state. They've already backfired on us. And they keep saying, we're the bullies. No, folks, they are the bullies.
That's right.
They keep intimidating and forcing and harassing. And I'm not pointing at any individual. It's a collective body of people. This is about principle. This is about right and wrong. And so as I talked today about this lawsuit, these things dovetail with that. This is not good. Where's the picture? Maybe I closed it. Is there a picture? Oh, there is. All right. As I talk about this, I entitled this presentation, Us versus Them, also known as Appling v. Doyle. Now, there is, I've never aspired to fame, and that is the gospel truth. Never. I surely didn't want to be known by a court case against former Governor Jim Doyle. Joe never aspired to that. But if you read the list of people who are a part of the people who brought this lawsuit, you would see your own Joe Egelhoff as one of the plaintiffs. Absolutely. These things don't come without a cost. They do come with cost. And there's 3 other board members of our organization who also stepped on. And we have 8 board members now, but at that time we were only about 5, I think, and 4 of them jumped on. And I'm going to explain why I chose the colors I did. I chose the color black for the background because that's the color of the robes the justices of our Wisconsin Supreme Court wear. And they figure very, very prominently into this. I chose yellow or gold for what we're doing, defending the institution of marriage, the will of the people of Wisconsin voters and the Wisconsin Constitution, because that is solid gold, folks. That's who we are. And I chose the white as the accent because this is a black and white issue. It's not murky. It's not gray. And I want to quickly go through the timeline with you. David hit some of the high points, but I want to cover, this started in 2009 when Governor Doyle signed the state budget and included in there this Domestic Partnership Registry. And that was concluded in June and July. And so it went into effect in August of 2009. In August of 2009, 2 days after it was in effect, our board members filed what is called an original action petition with the Wisconsin Supreme Court. What an original action petition means is we were asking the Supreme Court, the highest court in our state, to take up the case directly. Don't make us go through circuit court. Don't make us go through the Court of Appeals. Take it up directly. It's so important, it needed immediate action. Well, the court, in its infinite wisdom, in November of 2009, denied us that opportunity. They said no. Interestingly, the day they denied it, I was in the court chambers listening to the court do oral arguments on a related matter. McConkey versus the state of Wisconsin was the lawsuit that was about whether or not what we all voted on dealt with one issue or 2 issues. And the Supreme Court heard the oral arguments on that in the morning. By the time I got back to the office after doing lunch with the attorney, we had the notice from the court that they had refused us the opportunity to take this case directly to the Supreme Court. And the court, of course, has to give no reason, just denied. So then we had said, okay, because what that message is if you want to do this, you've got to start at the circuit court level. Now, this was before the state legislature and the governor signed the new law that said you can file lawsuits regarding state law or constitutional matters in any circuit court in the state. You know, they just did this a year or so ago. So we were ahead of that, so we had no choice. Do you think for a moment we would have filed in Dane County if we could have filed anywhere else? Yeah. I don't think so, because we knew what was written on this. So we filed in July of 2010. The board members recollected, and we came back as plaintiffs. Now we're not. Let me clarify something. We're not suing. We're not challenging this as plaintiffs as a collective board. We are actually coming in our individual capacity as taxpayers. Okay. So Joe is an individual as a taxpayer. I'm an individual as a taxpayer. Now, the other side knows we're collectively from Wisconsin Family Action, so everybody just talks about it as Wisconsin Family Action's lawsuit. And since we're the ones that are funding it, working on it, with our friends from Alliance Defending Freedom. So we came back in July 2010, we filed in the Dane County Circuit Court, and another whole year later, in the year that it should be written in infamy in Wisconsin memory, with the protests and the recalls and the statewide recount and all that, in June of that year, and these, by the way, these always happen. The court decisions always happen in some obtuse time. I was one of our board members had loaned me his cabin for 3 or 4 days. I was literally in the middle of nowhere between Athelstane and Crivets. No cell phone reception, no internet reception. I had dashed into Crivets to do something for the office, and while I was there, I got a phone call en route saying, the court handed down the decision today in the case. Oh, great. So for the next 2 days, I drove back and forth to do interviews and make sure we got our press releases and everything out. This timing is terrible. But of course, they ruled against us. They said, oh, this is fine. This same-sex only, statewide, Domestic Partnership Registry is just fine. It is totally constitutional. It doesn't matter what's in the Constitution, quite frankly. So then we turned around in July, that next month, we filed an appeal with Branch 4 of the Court of Appeals. Branch 4 is a major geographic area. I mean, it goes like all the way up to Wausau and comes all the way down the west side of the state, and it goes over almost to Jefferson County. So it's a huge geographic area, but it headquarters in Madison. So of course, all of the judges there are from the Madison area, and we filed our appeal. In July of this year, the Court of Appeals said, we don't think we should be the ones to do this. We think, Supreme Court, this is the second time now, you should do this. So the term they use is they certified it to the Supreme Court. So then we were waiting again. Will the Supreme Court take it up this time? Now remember what's happened in between here. Prosser's had his election. We've had the choking incident. Prosser went AWOL, who knew for how long or where, I'm not sure where he was. Gableman had all of his legal issues. Now we have a Rogan-Sack election staring us in the face in April. So the court has been in kind of interesting water. So here's the Branch 4 coming and saying, no, you should take this because it's a statewide issue and it's going to have lots of ramifications. Well, in September of this year, the Supreme Court denies us again. They said no to the Branch 4. We aren't going to take it. You're going to deal with it. So we wondered what they would do. Well, on December 20th, I don't know about anybody else, that's the day we had the nearly 2 feet of snow. And so nobody was in Madison. The Supreme Court chambers nobody was there. So we knew they were going to release it, and lo and behold, it came out on Friday, the 21st. The 21st of December. I mean, who's paying attention here, you know? Well, we were, and lo and behold, surprise, shock, amazing. Well, Branch 4 agreed with the lower court. So now, where are we? That brings us back to right now. Last Tuesday, the 22nd of January, we filed what is called a petition to the Wisconsin Supreme Court, third time, asking them to please review the decision of the Branch 4 Court of Appeals. Now we wait. We wait again. Our sense is that the court, with the election coming up in April, will not even let us know whether they'll take the case until after the election. Now, if they do that, The court tries to clear its calendar and get everything done by June 30th. That's the end of their session. So sometime after April 2nd, which is the election, they have to determine, are they going to take the case? And secondly, if they take it, then they have to schedule oral arguments and then write an opinion and get it released and published by the 30th of June. So they will be on a very tight 3-month time schedule. And the court, has its own pacing as well. So that's where we are. And I want to talk just a little bit about what we're doing here. Here's the marriage amendment, and I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but if you didn't vote on it, don't ever tell me, okay? Don't ever tell me. And this is taken right out of the state constitution. Article 13, Section 13 is created November 2006. You had it right, David. Only a marriage between one man and one woman shall be valid or recognized as a marriage in this state. A legal status identical to or substantially similar to that of marriage for unmarried individuals shall not be valid or recognized in this state. That's what we approved. Let me ask you, as citizens of this great state, did the wording bother you? Did it confuse you? Did you know what you were voting on?
No, it's clear.
Sure, it was clear, and we fought it for how many months in the court of public opinion. But here's what's at issue. Is the new legal status that's been created by this Domestic Partnership Registry called a domestic partner, is it identical or substantially similar to the legal status of marriage? And if it is, then it is therefore by definition in violation of the Wisconsin Constitution. That is what all the row is about. Is it consequential? You bet it's consequential. Marriage is a unique institution. It is not government's job to recreate it, redefine it. They didn't create it. They didn't originally define it. God created it. He defined it. It's His institution. It's for His glory. It's for our good. And when man starts messing around with it through... Now, I might disagree a little bit with David on some of this, but I think government has a very central role in marriage. Government should be protective of marriage. Look, marriage is the way we used to and still should be bringing the next generation in. It's the only natural way we have. It's the best way we have. And government ought to always be interested in protecting the next generation because that's your taxpayer. I mean, let's bring it down to the reality and the cold hard facts. If you want to replenish the state of Wisconsin, and right now, do you know that for over 20 years we've been below the replacement birth rate here in this state? The only reason we've experienced growth is there's been people moving in and we've had immigration. That's it. And we also have started, our elder population is living longer, but we're not replacing even the ones that are dying. So ultimately it catches up with you and you don't have a tax base. You don't have workers. It will catch up with us, folks. It is worth protecting. And I'll be hanged if we're going to go spend all that time and money that we did in 2003 through 2006 to pass this with 1.25 million people voting yes for marriage, to have them come in. Remember, it started in 2009. This was 2.5 years later. 2.5 years later, we're under assault. Yes, it's important. And yes, if you allow a legal status that is identical or substantially similar to marriage to come in and be legalized in this state, you have mocked the amendment. You have denigrated the institution of marriage. And whenever you do that, you just keep driving marriage down. We've already had a 20% drop in marriage in this state in 20 years. Now that should bother everybody. You want to know what the corollary to that is? 38% of the babies born in this state are now born out of wedlock. Does it bother anybody that well over 30% of the babies in this state are born on Medicaid? Come on! Seriously, can you afford it? In cold hard facts, can you afford that? Well, obviously we can't. We can't afford that in financial terms, and we certainly can't afford the rest of it, the fallout, the heartache, the hurt, all the things that happen to kids in general who are in those situations. And by the way, fastest way to put a woman and a baby in poverty? Be born in a single parent home or divorce. Very fastest way. So that's what's at issue. Here's what we contend, and I'm going to tell you something. I took this right out of the petition that we filed last week, and I want to work through it with you real quickly. This is the wording from the attorneys. The trial court erred in failing to find that the legal status of marriage exists solely and immediately upon compliance with the procedural regimen promulgated by the legislature. Now, you have to understand, attorneys are paid to use big words, okay? And they're paid to put them in such a form that you have to unravel it. This is what, as an English teacher, I call a convoluted construction, okay? But essentially, the argument is this, that the lowest court, the Dane County Circuit Court, ignored the fact that you have a legal status, not based on benefits, but based on whether or not you followed the rules to get into the thing. What are the rules to become a married couple in the state of Wisconsin? How many of you, when you signed up, said, okay, where are all my benefits? Show me the paper, county clerk. Show me what I've got. I want to see them all because I won't know I'm married until I know all the things I'm getting from the feds and the state. Of course you didn't. You went down, number one, requirement. You have to be both in agreement that you're going to enter the marriage. Number two, you have to follow the protocol. The protocol is, in this state, you have to be male and female. And number two, you both have to be over 18 or have parental permission if you're 16 or under, and under 18. You have to be, what's the other one? You can't be closer than a second cousin. And that's about it.
Single. You have to be single.
Yeah, you can't already be in it. That's good. Thank you, Myra. Yeah, you can't, that's, and it's true. You can't already be in another marriage. That's exactly what it says. Those are the rules. And the minute you say that you are both in agreement that you're going to get married and you meet the requirements, you have a legal status called married and marriage, right? Mm-hmm. The other stuff comes because you are in that legal status, doesn't it? Yeah. You get all of the, quote, goodies because you are married. The legal status of marriage has nothing to do with the benefits and responsibilities and obligations that come from the state. Nothing. The court completely right over their head. Because what the court alleged at both the branch level and the circuit court was, well, look, they didn't get all the benefits. They can't adopt. And they, you only gave them about, maybe a third or half of all the benefits and obligations. What kind of nonsense is that? Legal status has nothing to do with that. Secondly, the chapter, the Domestic Partnership Registry is called Chapter 770. Alone by itself violated the amendment, irrespective of statutory rights and obligations. Those are the benefits we were talking about. And see that word incidental? Those are incidental to the legal status, meaning they're not part and parcel of it. Because that regimen is virtually identical to the Chapter 765 regimen for marriage. Now listen to this. If I'm in a domestic partnership registry, I have to go down and I have to go down with someone who says, yep, I'm willing to. Both of us have to be over 18. Neither one of us can be in another marriage or another domestic partnership. We cannot be, listen to this, how deep this goes. Neither one of us can be involved in that relationship with someone closer than a second cousin. In a homosexual relationship, what in the world does that matter? We protect that in marriages because of the procreation that we want in marriage. That's why we protect that. Why do you protect it in a home? And then our state law, this just amazes me. Our state law requires county clerks, when you come to file for a marriage license, to also give the people information on fetal alcohol syndrome. The law requires you to do that for these domestic partnerships too. Seriously. Court just went right past them. None of that mattered. What really mattered, according to them, was much different. See the word stick counting I have highlighted up here? When we talk about stick counting, that's what we call making marriage a bundle of sticks. And here's what the court said. Marriage is simply all of the benefits, all of the rights that people that are married have from the state government and the federal government pulled together in a little bundle. And if you have all of those, then you're married. Really? Really? No. If you lost every benefit that the state and federal government gives you today, married couples, today, do you still have a legal status of married?
Yes.
Well, of course you do. Has nothing to do with it. Neither court picked it up. Neither one. And then this last one, I love this one. The amendment's purposes were, among other things, to preserve in both substance and appearance to the public and to the next generation God bless these attorneys. The uniqueness of both the marital relationship and the role of mothers and fathers.
Amen.
That's what we're talking about, folks. I am so grateful for attorneys who get it and who can put it into the legalese that it has to be put into to be able to go to the Supreme Court and have them say, oh, we understand this. Look what we're talking about here. In substance and appearance to the public and the next generation. Do you understand that the Domestic Partnership Registry is not about benefits? It's about normalizing. It's about gaining acceptance in the public square. It's about pushing it in your face, if I may be blunt about it. That's how you get to the Boy Scouts.
Yes.
That's how you get to all these churches that have capitulated on this issue. And that's what this was all about. The day that the registry went into effect in early August of 2009, we had some of our team out at some of the county courthouses. They were in there singing, "Going to the courthouse." You tell me that isn't about public perception? And their announcements, we have them captured on camera. They came out and what did they say? They didn't say, "Oh, finally, we get to," and name all these benefits. What they said was, finally, our people, this state will look at us as a couple. That's what they want. They want normalization, affirmation, acceptance. Quite frankly, what they also want is they want everybody to know that they think they're better than all the rest of us. That's really where we are right now, because it keeps being pushed and pushed and pushed in that direction. That's what we're up against. That's why it's so important. I'm going to jump into the importance of the spring election. Wisconsin Family Action cannot do what we would normally do during an election cycle right now, which is take a position on a candidate. We can't. Can you imagine if we took a position and endorsed one of the candidates, and that candidate won, seated on the Supreme Court? Next day, next week, next 2 weeks later, they're sitting there looking at whether or not they should take our case. The other side would scream bloody murder. That, you can't vote on that. You were endorsed by this group. You have to recuse yourself. So then you have a split court, 3-3. And the law says if the court is split, then the case stays at the next level of judgment. So then we'd be ruled against, because the next level of judgment is at the Court of Appeals, and they've ruled against us. It is very, very important. So Wisconsin Family Council is going to be doing massive education work on this. We're going to rev up our church liaisons that James and Joe worked so hard on during the election to get them to put education pieces in the church. We have to expose. I think Ed Vallone's going to win the primary. I think the other guy, the lemon law guy, I don't see how you can be what he is and have a ghost of a chance to win in the primary in February. But we're going to rev it up, and we're going to let people make up their minds. But folks, it is extremely important. Here's the big picture. And this is one of the concluding parts of our petition. More importantly, the legal status of husband and wife, marriage, is created by the contract of two private citizens who, one, consent, as I talked about earlier, and two, conform to the criteria and regimen prescribed by the legislature. That is, they're both over 18, they don't, they're not in another relationship, they aren't marrying someone closer than a second cousin and that kind of thing. That legal status is not created by the legislature subsequently, after the fact, attaching rights and obligations to the status that private citizens have already created. The private citizens have already created. This is critical. We have one last chance. We're hoping that the Supreme Court will take this case the third time. For the life of us, we can't understand why they bumped it every time. I will tell you, it's all political. It's all political. And so we're praying, we're hoping. I think the attorneys did a really nice job on this 46-page petition. We haven't even gotten to oral arguments yet. And that will actually get the court to take the case and move forward. I'm going to tell you something. This April election is critical. It's not critical just for this issue, but would you please think ahead of all the issues that you know right now are before the Supreme Court of the state of Wisconsin. Act 10 issues are sitting there. There are all kinds of things at stake. please, if you don't support us and help us do our education effort through the churches and through we're going to try to mail postcards to citizens across the state like we did last time. If you don't do that, hook onto somebody and help get the word out about these candidates. People need to know as much as we can possibly tell them so they can make wise choices. This is a low turnout election, and even with the other side working very hard to get their people there, it's going to be a low turnout election. And it's going to be all about who gets the most of the most people there on the right side. So please do that. And while I'm talking about spring elections, I'm going to divert here for just a moment. Sunday night I spoke up in Shawano at the Lincoln Day dinner for the Shawano County GOP, and it was an opportunity for me to do more than just talk with the people about the things that are important. They were introducing school board candidates. That was exciting to me. They introduced 3 local school board candidates, 1 from Doyle and 2 from Shawano. And as I listened to them talk for 2 or 3 minutes apiece, I thought, these are people I need to get to know. So after the event was over, 2 of them I got to talk to, 2 men who were running in tandem. And here's what I told everybody in that audience when I had my opportunity. There is no more important role that we have in the community than the school board for elected officials. The closer you are to the people, the more important it is. Because the decisions are made right that affect you right there. And so when we can get good people elected as school board folks, we need to do it. You have school board races up here. You have Neenah, you have Appleton, you have all these, there's a ton of them. You have primaries coming up. I plead with you to find the good candidates, support the good candidates. Yes, give them money. Every time I come, I try to tell you that. You don't get good candidates elected if you don't help them financially. Secondly, lend them your feet. Find out what you can do. Do a meet and greet for them in your community, in your neighborhood, and invite people to come in and get to know them. We're working with some right now. We're beginning our endorsement process with some really good candidates, and James is spearheading that for us this year in the spring election. Folks, this is important. You want to change the direction of your school district? Get better people elected to the table. And for the life of me, I don't understand why we don't think it should be us. It's so easy to sit back and say, oh man, I don't like this, I don't like that. I don't let this group that I spoke to earlier this week remain nameless. After I got through bringing what I wanted to bring and then what they'd asked me to bring on religious liberty, they sat there for 45 minutes and complained. And I finally said, if you don't like the people who elect you, you need to be running better candidates. And you need to be helping the candidates that you put out there. We aren't going to ever change things if all we do is sit and talk about how bad everything is. We have got to run candidates that can win, and we've got to get behind those candidates and be relentless on it. And if they lose the first time, help them run again. Look, it's invaluable what candidates learn the first time through a cycle. Those of you who have been candidates, look at me and shake your head if I'm right. Okay? If you were doing it again, you would do different things. You would do things, maybe other things that you didn't do. But folks, these school board things, you can win school board elections. You can win those. But you have to be smart about it and you have to be dedicated to it. And it's my understanding you're having a panel here next week. Is that yep. David's? Yep. The Davids are on school board, is that right? School board. School board. Boy, be here. Be here and ask those questions and talk to the people who are going to be on that panel. Are you going to have candidates?
We'll have candidates here.
Have candidates? What a golden opportunity. These spring elections are so important. Now I want to stop right there and take a minute for questions. Do I have just a couple minutes for questions, David?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Do you have any questions, Maureen?
This is just a burning question that you alluded to it earlier between David and you. My understanding is marriage originally within the government was a contract when a white man wanted to marry a black woman. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what my understanding is. Because otherwise it was left to the church and it wasn't something, they weren't giving out all the benefits. So why would, between those two sides, why wouldn't we want Wisconsin or any other state and the rest of the government structure to stay out of it? And you're saying we should protect it. But what would be wrong with just, having them not define it for us and just leave it alone?
Do we care about the rest of the culture? If we don't care about the rest of the culture, then we can say, okay, government has no role. Okay, let me give you my 3-second speech on this. We have to remember that government is a God-ordained institution. Family, government, and the church. That's my understanding of Scripture. Those are the institutions, okay? So government is not inherently evil, and it does have a role. All right, now granted, that role has changed through the years, and government's done things because it's filled with human beings and fun. But government has, in this country, and the reason government in this country got involved with this institution of marriage was they knew intuitively they had to work to keep parents, our children, with their parents. All right? And so it was in government's best interest to promote that institution that tied children to their moms and dads. And that's why we did that. Now, it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be, in a society where we are in a more primitive culture, then I would think you don't need that kind of government interaction with it. We're way beyond primitive, folks. The horses left the barn, and this is where we are. But that's why government got involved with this. Government originally said we're going to proscribe marriage because we need to keep children tied to their parents. Why? Because the future of America depends on the next generation having the value system transferred to them that enables them to be good citizens and good taxpayers and good leaders and all of that. So that's why they prescribed it. So I don't think that it's remotely possible in this culture. I think David is right, exactly right. He doesn't see enough libertarian intent at this point to have government out of too much. So I don't think they're going to do that. And I get very nervous when I talk. We get these questions all the time. Why doesn't the government just stay out of it? I think we have bedlam. We don't have what was the common bond years ago in this country? It was Judeo-Christian principles and values. Nobody would have thought we'd be talking about people marrying people of the same sex. And by the way, did you know in Utah there is a lawsuit right now brought by the guy who does Sister Wives? The man on that show, if anybody's watched it, it's about polygamous marriage. Okay, the man on that show has sued the state of Utah, alleging that their ban on polygamy is unconstitutional. And I was reading an article where the people who were in the courtroom said it sounded very much to them like the judge was very sympathetic to his case. And people said to me, when I said the next step is polygamy, just watch, people said, you're just such an alarmist. Oh, yeah, right. No, you got your head in the sand.
That's right.
If you can change the gender, you can change the number. So here we are. If we don't prescribe it and stick to the basics, okay, we're in trouble. I just don't see a way for government to extract it. So, yes?
A question that sometimes comes up, it sounds like a peripheral question, and I won't get into all the arguments, but one of the questions is that in some states, one of the things that's necessary for marriage to be recognized by the state is consummation on the wedding night or sometime thereafter. To your knowledge, is that required in the state of Wisconsin?
No, it's grounds for annulment.
What is grounds for annulment?
Not lack of consummation is grounds for annulment.
It is.
Yes, but it is not ground. You do not have to attest to no. When you get your marriage license and you've met the requirements, you are married, irrespective of intimacy. Of course, most people have that backwards today. Yes.
Do you have a list of the defendants?
The defendants, Joe. We originally sued Governor Doyle and a couple of people in his administration, and then when Governor Walker became the governor, we were kind of uncomfortable, and so was he. But he decided that he agreed that it was constitutional, so he stopped any defense of it. So all of his legal team has stopped. So what happened was the court allowed in what they call interveners. And the interveners just happened to be Fair Wisconsin, the state's pro-homosexual advocacy group. They're in there, and Lambda Legal is also in. Lambda Legal is the national legal arm that is pro-homosexual, and all that it does, they're in there as the defendants. That's the two groups.
And I think there are 4 listed from Fair Wisconsin, and one of them is Appleton's diversity coordinator.
That's right.
Your tax dollar and mine.
Did you all hear that? One of the defendants that's actually named, there are 2 homosexual couples, I think, in there, right? I think they are. And one of them is your Appleton School District Diversity.
No, City.
City of Appleton Diversity Coordinator. I remember when you pointed that out. I'd forgotten that. Thank you. Yes, David?
There's something I want you to comment on that was in the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals ruling, and they cited this article you wrote in the UW-Madison student paper.
I gave an interview.
Do you want me to, or was it an interview?
You can read it.
Or do you want to just?
I can't remember the quote, so.
Okay. This is supposedly something Julaine wrote, and I want her to comment on it. It says that the first phrase of the marriage amendment protects the word marriage, while the second protects marriage from being undermined by look-alike marriages or marriage by another name, such as Vermont-style civil unions. Without the second phrase, the first is meaningless and leaves the institution unprotected. Contrary to the message being consistently given by opponents of the amendment, the second phrase does not ban civil unions. It does appropriately prohibit civil unions that are marriage by another name. However, it does not preclude the state legislature from considering some legal construct, call it what you will, that would give select benefits to cohabiting adults.
Okay.
I was wondering if you could explain what you meant by that.
Well, this is why attorneys would really like all people like me to shut up before you do things like this. No, not really. I stand by those comments because the minute I saw that the language that was in the budget on the February night that it was introduced when the governor gave his speech and I was looking at it in print, the next morning I contacted the attorneys and I said I could have never in my wildest imaginations imagined that they could do what they did, which was create a legal status that is identical to marriage because of how you get into it. And so we never envisioned them actually taking the marriage regimen, the regulations, and just appropriating them into a whole new legal status. What you can do, and what governments have done, is you can take select, quote, benefits or rights. I don't like to use rights, I don't think they're rights, but obligations and benefits, and you can give them to people, but you can't give them to, under our amendment, but you cannot give them to them on the basis of trying to make something that's marriage-like. Other states call it, what are they? Reciprocal benefits. Reciprocal benefits, which means that I could live with my aunt and we could have some kind of benefits that the government could give us because we're sharing household and sharing expenses. But we're not trying to create a legal status that is looking like marriage or acting like marriage or quacking like marriage. But do you see what I'm doing? Hawaii did that. When Hawaii got their marriage amendment passed, they gave reciprocal beneficiary benefits to people who were cohabiting, but the sexual part of it was completely out of it, and that's what I was saying. You can't do it on the basis of trying to make it like marriage, or you can't even put it in comparison to marriage. And that's where these local communities are wrong. Appleton just did it. Appleton passed a domestic partnership benefit package for city employees, and what they did was they said, well, our relationships look like marriage, and married people have them, and so they put themselves directly in contrast to them. According to the amendment, you can't do that. They could have said, okay, all people who are in cohabiting relationships, or if you're living with your nephew or your aunt or your grandma or whatever, we're going to institute an employee plus one package. I personally like the employee plus one package. If I'm an employee of the city of Appleton, I get my insurance and I get another insurance coverage for anyone of my choosing. And then they're not asking you to sign the Domestic Partnership Registry to attest that you're in a loving, committed relationship. So that's the reciprocal beneficiary type thing.
As a taxpayer, I don't like that.
I understand that, but as a taxpayer, we don't like any of this stuff. But I'm saying from a legal standpoint, it passes legal muster that way. This does not pass legal muster. So that's what I was saying in there, and we knew. Nobody said to me when I was running this amendment campaign, okay, Julaine, here's what you got to say and here's what you can't say. After the fact, they came to me and said, oh, we really wish you hadn't said this, this, and this. I said, well, where were you when we started this? Where were all you legal beagles when I needed you? You know? So there is some of that to mop up, but the attorneys have assured me that I meant exactly what I just explained. And that's what I was saying. Who would have dreamed we would have had something just like marriage? So, any other questions? My time's up and you got to go. You got to go to work. All right, thank you. God bless.